Many of us spend our whole life in search of purpose, desperately seeking meaningful ways to make a difference in the world with the short amount of time we are given. The Deploying High podcast has been designed to help you analyze what gives you purpose.
Hi, this is Deploying High, and I'm Chief Gene Saunders, founder and CEO of Project Lifesaver International, which brings you this program. Today, I have a special guest. Well, in fact, I think all of my guests are special, but this one is somewhat extra special. I've known this young lady for a few years. We've collaborated on a couple of projects. But the thing that she is most notable for is if you look in the background here and you happen to be on YouTube, or in her background, she is the author of Deploying High, the namesake of this program. And probably sometime within this next few minutes, we'll even tell you where that title came from. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce Miss Nora Firestone.
Thank you, Chief. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. So thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very, very excited about your show. I think it's the perfect fit for you and everything that you do. And I know that with your intellectual curiosity and your ongoing, relentless pursuit of knowledge and people and what makes people tick and your interest, your deep, deep interest in people, which is behind and underlying everything that you've ever done. And that does actually tie in to the title, Deploying High. And I'd love for us to get to that at some point. But, I think this is, I'm really happy for you, having this platform to further dig into people's brains and what makes people tick. And life is so interesting. This is one of the best ways to do that. So, yeah, so thanks.
Thank you, Nora. And if you keep on, we're going to expand this show to an hour and a half.
Sorry.
Just let you keep going.
All right, I can do that. Well, as a talk radio host myself for 5.5 years, I can absolutely do that, but I won't.
Yeah, I know. I've had the pleasure of being on your show a couple of times.
Yes, you have.
But not to cut you off, which I'm doing.
Go on.
Tell me and our listeners, who is Nora Firestone?
Well, you can go read a short form or long form bio that I wrote at norafirestone.com. Now, I have to say, I am a website designer, but I'm a cobbler with no shoes, so my website is not in the shape that it will be after I redesign it. But you go to my website, norafirestone.com, and look at the about page or whatever. That'll give you like a good idea. But I will tell you in short, I love life. I'm a person of great love, joy, like certainly transcendent of circumstances that could otherwise, if I don't choose to, let them somehow improve me, could otherwise have broken me, right? So, so I think, okay. All right, so here's the thing, I'm not one for categorizing or labeling people, and I'm really, that extends to how I feel about, personality type assessments and things. So I can tell you exactly who I am and why. It would take a while, but I know myself better than anybody else can possibly know me, and I think that's really key to who I am, and I think that's a great thing for anybody to cultivate and develop. But if I had to label myself a personality type, I would say I am an EGNIGMA personality type. EGNIGMA. Enigma.
Really?
So, yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah, I love life, love people. I was a reporter, newspaper reporter and magazine reporter for many, many years, which is how you and I met back in probably 2008 or 9 or so. And that, talk about learning something new every day. There's no job that I know of or that I've ever done where you can accomplish that. And, you get to pick people's brains as a journalist and then as a talk radio show host like you're doing now. You get to pick people's brains and in a way that you just don't normally have access to. And you get to learn about who people are, why they do things, what are the impacts and implications of those things. And I just think life is fascinating. And I consider life my creative studio. And that's who I am. I'm joyful.
Well, I can tell you, from personal experience, you are good at picking people's brains.
Thanks. Thanks. You too.
You've been a journalist for some time. Take us through your career as a journalist.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this would go back to who is Nora Firestone, right? So since I was a kid, I've had this voice in my head. I call her the Muse. She's the writer's voice in my head, right? Ever since I was a little kid, I've had this voice in my head kind of with me through all the experiences that I've had. And one thing people who don't know me well don't know about me is that I've been through some very, very, very challenging, adverse, circumstances in life that, again, I have chosen, I chose at an early age, I'm going to face these things head on, go through the experience, come out better on the other side, and then help other people through it. But I've always had this voice in my head kind of pointing things out to me, like the voice of wisdom, the voice of epiphanies, the voice of, observation, the voice of, reason and rationale, and what are you going to make of this and that? And that voice is really the voice of the writer in me. And what she would always prompt me is, hey, you should stop what you're doing and go write that down. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, any little realization and observation that was somehow significant, or had something substantial to it, that voice would just point out gently, hey, that you should probably go write that down. You'll want to expand on that at some point. So that's who I've just always been. And then through some really, really, tough things, I started writing more. So one of those things was the death of my first child at birth, just before his birth. So during labor, and so that's when I was in my early 20s. And that's when I said, I need to take that voice more seriously. And I realized that if I call it honoring the muse, I realized if I don't honor the muse, it's my job, if I call myself a writer, to honor the muse. And it's my job to shut up and take dictation. And if I don't honor the muse, she will go find somebody else to nag, because she's been with me, all my life. And if she's nagging me to go write this down, go write that down, and I'm not doing it, well, she deserves somebody who will. She deserves to go find somebody who will. So, and I knew that. So I said, no, I'm going to honor the muse. And so, that was in my 20s that I started taking myself more seriously as a writer. Because again, I've always known I was a writer since I was a little kid. So then, flash forward, so then I did some writing that was not paid writing. Some were articles for magazines. This was very early on. And then in the 90s, script writing for a children's television show that my family, we all did together, my brothers and I was the script writer. So that was a television show, children's television show that aired on PBS in the tri-state area for a few years. You can still find it online. It's called Zebby's Zoo. I think you can find episodes on YouTube. But anyway, that was a phenomenal experience. And the discipline, see, this is the thing. A lot of people say, oh, I'm a writer, or oh, I have a book in me, or, if I could just be inspired. Writing is not about being quote unquote inspired. It's about discipline. So it's about both, So if you think you're a writer and you've got stuff in you, just go start doing it. Because what is a writer? A writer is a person who writes, right? Just like anything else. Like, what is a driver? A person who drives. What is a, shoemaker? Well, a person who makes shoes. What is a mom? A person who mothers children, right? So just like anything else, if you're a writer, well, get to work writing. Go sit down and write. It's not about waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for some magical moment when you're going to puke out a book, But it doesn't happen that way. You got to write. It's a craft. Do it. Then you come to a point where you've been doing this. You're really honing your craft. You're learning a lot. You're getting better at this, and then you can start pursuing paid work. So my job as a journalist started as quite a fluke, but I don't see it as a fluke at all. I see it as a natural thing that I've always experienced. And some of my favorite books, this is a little bit of an aside, but this ties perfectly into this. So I love to, I've never been a big reader because I have something with my eyes where it hurts. It puts me to sleep to read much, for too long. But I like audiobooks. So I've always read people. I read through what I hear and see and observe. Like, that's my reading, right? It doesn't have to be print words on paper, but I've always been a prolific writer. So you don't have to be an avid reader of print text to be an avid writer, a prolific writer. You just don't, because you can read your world through a full-on sensory experience of everything, right? That's how I always approach it. So, but going back to how I got into journalism, some of the flash forward again. Some of the favorite books of mine are books like let's see, The Master Keys System. Some others, Psychopath Free. that's something everybody should read because it's really important stuff. Some of my favorite authors: James Allen, Napoleon Hill, Neville Goddard, Ayn Rand, Vadim Zeland, and Charles Haanel, who wrote The Master Keys System. So these books I just recently discovered, and they explain what I've experienced all my life, the things that I've experienced all my life that are of a really, some people would say, supernatural nature, and you and I, Chief, have spoken about guardian angels, so I'd love to bring that up again, with you and
Okay.
have you talk a little bit about that. But this all ties in because I've always understood. I've always been a natural manifester of the things that I envision, right? You're a very visionary person as well. So I've always been extremely visionary, extremely creative and analytical, equally creative and analytical, and a really like a natural manifester of whatever I envision. These things just manifest, right? And I always, I kind of always thought, well, that's life. It wasn't until I got older, because I was always like that as a kid. So, and that had also a lot to do with that voice in my head, which is why she's not just my muse as an author, but as a voice of wisdom, like pointing things out. And I think that, again, that some of that has to do with like a guardian angelship, but so this does play into your question. I would, in my mind, just have a very clear vision of something, and then that is my intention, and then I just know that it is going to turn out that way, and I leave it alone, and then it does. And so, flashing forward now to, I guess it was in my maybe 30s, late 30s or so. I was a decorative painter, so I've always been an artist as well. I was a decorative painter, and I would climb, I don't know, 12-foot ladders to 18-foot ceilings or whatever, and I'd be up there painting, and and I realized one day, someday I'm going to be in my 50s, like I am now, and my 60s, and do I still want to be climbing these ladders and doing all this physical, like literally dancing up on a 12-foot ladder, painting these decorative finishes, am I going to think that that might be a little too dangerous for me at some point? And I said, yes. So I set an intention, very clear intention. Within 5 years, I'm going to transition from decorative painting to being a paid professional writer, period. That was my intention. It was very clear. I could see it. It was done. And that's what these books, that's what these authors with these classic books that I was mentioning earlier. I haven't mentioned all the books, but the Master Keys System, and then anything by Neville Goddard and Napoleon Hill are excellent sources to start with. But these books, written many, many years ago, explain what I've always experienced. And that's why it's exciting for me to have discovered them recently, because they explain how this works. I've always known it worked. I've always assumed everybody understood this and lived this and acted on it. I've always appreciated it and embraced it and recognized it and you optimized it, really. But so what happened was, so here I am in my late 30s maybe or whatever, and I'm a decorative painter. I say I have this intention. I'm going to switch within 5 years to being a professional writer. Boom, done. Okay. About a year and a half later, I was leaving my house to go to a decorative painting job. The people weren't going to be there. I had a key, so I could come and go as my schedule allowed. So I'm driving out of my neighborhood, and I passed the scene. It was Thanksgiving weekend, so I think it was the weekend right after Thanksgiving, I think, or it was the Monday of Thanksgiving week. So over the weekend, what had happened was three young men, high school age men, had been driving in a truck down the main road, not a big road, and their truck hit a tree. There were no drugs or alcohol involved or anything. It was just a freak accident, and they all died. And so I'm approaching the traffic in the neighborhood is it's commuter crawl traffic, and it's crawling because the tree that they hit is still down, because now it's Monday morning. Nobody has come to clean it up yet, right? So there's this giant hole in the ground and this uprooted root ball and this giant tree laying across the median, and all the cars, everybody knows what happened there, and it's so sad, and the cars are inching. It's a reverent and sad scene. And then here come the Virginia Beach City Parks and Landscape Division or whatever, the people in their truck, and it's their job to finish uprooting this tree and getting rid of it, right? Well, rather than jump out of their truck with all kinds of noisy equipment and just get hacking away and getting right to it and boom, 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 be done. One by one, they disembarked truck. I think there were two trucks, right? So they disembarked. They got out. They each walked over to where the hole in the ground with the root ball was. They waited for one another, and when they had all gotten there, man, they stood in a circle around the hole in the ground. They folded their hands, bowed their heads, and closed their eyes. And you can only assume they were praying, They all stood there as a group whose job it was, the Monday after this fatal accident that killed 3 young men in the community, to uproot the remains of the reminder of this horrible thing in front of all these people. They could have just hacked away at everything and been done with it. Hey, we didn't know the guys. We don't even know what happened here, as far as we know, right? But no, it was such an outstanding demonstration of respect and reverence for the community and for people they probably didn't even know, but just for the fact that people loved these young men. They're not here, and we've got to clean up. But before we do that, we're going to pray, or we're going to have this minute of silence and reverence for everybody involved. Man, so now I know this is a long way to get to the answer to your question about my career in journalism, but this is what started it. So I'm sitting there, and again, the traffic is not moving more than an inch a minute. So I've got all the time in the world to be observing this, and I am. And I'm saying, "Where's my camera? Where's my camera?" This was before I used a cell phone,
Nora, can you hold that thought for one moment? Mm-hmm. I'll be right back. You are a radio interviewer, so you know what I'm about to do.
All right.
All right.
Do it.
You are listening to Deploying High. I am Chief Gene Saunders with my guest, Nora Firestone. And now a few words from our sponsor, Project Lifesaver.
Squad 57.
You see it in the news. Patients with Alzheimer's or young children with autism wander off from their caregivers and become lost. After 24 hours, there's only a 50% survival rate. Searches can involve multiple agencies, hundreds of officers and volunteers, and thousands of dollars. Since 1999, Project Lifesaver International has provided first responders and caregivers with technology and training to quickly locate individuals with cognitive disorders who are prone to wander. The method relies on proven radio technology, together with specially trained search and rescue teams. The result? A 100% program success rate with over 3,600 lives saved so far. Instead of hours or days lost, the average recovery time is 30 minutes. To learn more, visit projectlifesaver.org.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deploying High podcast, bringing it all into view.
I'm back with Nora Firestone. This is Gene Saunders with Project Lifesaver International, your host for Deploying High. Nora, I think I've learned as much about you in the last few minutes as I knew the whole time we've known each other. And it's very intriguing. Now, I know I had to interrupt you in your thought. I hope you held on to it. So
Sure.
Would you go ahead and finish that?
Absolutely. So there I am in my car and at this scene of this. And I'm saying, "Where's my camera? Where's my camera?" I didn't have it with me. I wish I had my camera because everybody needs to see this. Everybody needs to see this. It's such it was such a beautiful scene, such a profoundly moving scene. And I thought the newspaper needs this picture so that everybody can see it. I didn't have my camera. So what did that voice in my head say? Well, you call yourself a writer, pull over and write the scene write the picture in words. That's what a writer does. And I said, can't argue with that, right? I can't argue with that. Okay, so I did. So that's what I did. So I pulled off to the side street right there. And for about 45 minutes, I just continued to watch everything unfold and record it instead of on a camera, on paper. And really, that's a big thing about writing. And it is a very key thing to reporting. You are simply, I always say, you're not, you're the camera, you know what I mean? Like, you don't see the photographer when you see a picture, you see the scene. That's your job as a writer. Just let people see the scene, not you as the writer, just like you don't see the photographer. So anyway, so that's what I did. So I wrote it up, and then I went home, and then I had no idea. I didn't have time to read the newspaper in those years because I was raising 3 kids and, busy family business and all that. So anyway, so I wrote this scene up. I wrote it all up and everything, and I wanted to send it to the newspaper. I had no idea how to do that. So my husband, John, at the time, I'm no longer married, but when I was, John said, well, what? I think you need to send it to the Virginia Beach section of the paper. I didn't know what that was, right? So I call the Virginia Pilot newspaper, and I get this nasty gatekeeper answers the phone. And I'm explaining to her, hey, I just saw something really incredible in our community. I think readers would really appreciate seeing this, and I'd love to send it to somebody at the paper. Who can I send it to take a look at it? And right away, this nasty little gatekeeper, naysayer, oh, you can't do that. Oh, editors have reporters for that. And I said, well, there was no reporter on the scene, so I took it upon myself to write up a report about it, and I'm happy to share it with you. Oh, no, they don't do that. Da, 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 da. You can't do that. Da, da. And and I, at some point, I'm listening to her, and I said, excuse me, are you the decision maker about these things? Are you an editor? And she said, no. And I said, well, then I don't think you're in a position to make this decision. I'd rather talk with an editor and have the editor make that decision. Who can I speak with, please? And she got nasty, and she said, hold on. And she, a few minutes later, gets back on the phone, and she said, send it to the main desk or whatever, right? Nice, the editor of the main desk, whatever. So anyway, so that's what I did. So anyway, about a week or two later, the editor of the Beacon, Victoria Heck, whom is a person who will always be a treasure in my heart. She's a fabulous person, fabulous editor. So anyway, she calls. What had happened was that they received my story. It went from this desk to this desk to this desk. Everybody was like, this is what she explained to me. The editors were like, yeah, this is really good, but it doesn't really fit my section. Yeah, this is good, but it doesn't fit my section. So they would pass it on to who might want it, So it landed at Victoria Heck's desk, editor of the Beacon, which is the Virginia Beach community section of the newspaper. And she loved it, and we talked, and she said, I want to publish it. And I said, great, We talked about, my writing background, which was really just workshops and stuff, a couple of college classes here and there, whatever. I don't have a degree in anything, in any college thing, much less journalism. So I could not have applied for this job and gotten it. I would not have gotten this job if I had applied for it the traditional way. That's why I say this was a fluke. But really, it had everything to do with the intention that I set and then acting on what I said I wanted, which was pulling over and recording the scene and then submitting it, right? So, so she essentially not only said, okay, I'm going to publish this, but also offered me a job. So it was a job as a freelance correspondent, which fit my thing perfectly. So I was not an employee. I didn't have to go through the traditional route to become a reporter, but I was a correspondent, and she assigned me, I had like a full-time writing schedule for the newspaper because of all the assignments she was always giving me. And then, so that went on for years and years when she, eventually she made me her cover story writer. So I was writing big cover stories and stuff. And then other editors from the newspaper and other products of the newspaper, like Inside Business newspaper and Inside Leadership magazine. This is the one that I wrote an article about you in. Those editors started calling me and hiring me as well. So I had about at least an 11-year career as a writer and reporter for big newspapers and magazines here in the region. Greatest experience, full of self-discipline for sure, but I've always been self-disciplined and creative, so it was a perfect thing for me. The people I've gotten to meet, you're a perfect example. Chief, you and your wife, Gene, and all the people who work there at Project Lifesaver with you. It's just enhanced my life so much, but again, it had everything to do with this extrasensory level of like consciousness and other energy, that again, I've always experienced, and people can read more about by people, from some of these authors that I've mentioned. Greatest career led me then to talk radio and in 2017, I think it was, when you said, hey, remember that book I said a few years ago that I should write, and about the organization people told me I should write, and I asked you if you want to help me with it, and I said, yes, I remember. And you said, well, what do you think? now might be a good time. And so that was just a beautiful project. I thoroughly, loved and appreciated being able to write the book, Deploying High, the extensive interviews that I had with you and others. And, you're just, I know this podcast, your show is not to rave about you and Project Lifesaver, I know. but I have to tell you, you're truly an amazing person. You are a person who has been guided by a lot of these same forces that I've always been guided by, and that's, you've got that intrepid nature that, or even if it's not so much nature, but it's something you've cultivated for a purpose, the tenacity, the perseverance, the self-discipline, the visionary, that very, very visionary quality, and that trust in, and that intuition, that trust in your judgment that, hey, I see this vision and it's a real thing. It's just not here yet for everybody else to see. I'm going to make it happen. So,
well, yeah. And I think everything you have said up to this point definitely reinforces that. If I were to ever have to give or be asked for advice, it would follow right along with what you've been saying. If you can see it in your mind, you can do it. You may have to do some preparation to get there, but you can do it. And the other thing is something I've always believed in, and I think it was reinforced in dealing with some of the Navy SEALs, and that their credo, never quit.
Yes.
No matter what happens, find a way to go over it, under it, around it, but never quit. And I think in history shows us that a lot of times some great ideas failed because the person did not persevere. So whatever you're doing, persevere, drive on.
I totally agree. And I would add to that sometimes, I know this about myself, and this is not bragging or anything like that. It's just some people, and you're one of these people as well. Some people have extreme foresight. We are extremely visionary, and we see things years, if not decades, before other people can see the potential in them. We already know, what we're seeing and what the potential is, and what the trajectory is, and we see it, and in our minds, this is a thing that's done in the future, right? So what can happen is, this is a very real thing. What can happen is we persevere. At some point, since on some things you can be so ahead of your time on some things that it's like you're banging your head against the wall trying to show other people that same vision, or convince or educate people to what this is and the importance of it. If enough time goes on, and you're still banging your head against the wall, sometimes it seems like it makes more sense to let it go, because I've got to turn my attention to this, that, or the other thing, or I'm putting so much energy into this thing, but I need to be making money. I'm losing money putting energy into this. So I agree with you. Persevere. And that that I just described is something that happens naturally to extreme visionaries with extreme foresight. So take Chief's advice even more to heart in those cases, because if it takes 10 years, it's going to happen. People are going to catch on to the importance of what you've been trying to tell them all this time, or whatever it is. So don't, 7 years in, don't say, oh, this is just a waste of my time. And then 3 years later, when other people realize it, then you regret having given up. So,
and I think that was brought home. I was watching TV the other night, and I don't know if you've seen this one or not, but Matt Damon has a commercial out. And I don't even remember exactly what it's for, but it highlights just exactly what we're talking about the people that had vision and followed through, and the
Mhm.
people that had vision and quit.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent of slogans that keep your mind and keep your drive into focus. And he closes that commercial by saying a slogan. I don't remember exactly where it comes from, but I agree with it, that fortune favors the brave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you have to persevere, I think you're showing some amount of bravery because, yeah, it's easy to quit.
Yeah.
Like, and I go back to the SEALs with buds. It's easy to quit. Go ring the bell, you're done.
Yeah.
But what does it take not to ring the bell? No?
Great faith
Well, great
and
faith
faith in your judgment. Yeah.
and in yourself.
In yourself. Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's something that you definitely exude is the great faith in yourself. And I appreciate that. I really do. Now, while we've got a few minutes left, you brought up the thing about guardian angels and the thing about deploying high.
Yeah.
Which one would you like to explore first?
Okay. Well, guardian angels might have to be another show, but deploying high. So here's so I wrote a couple of notes, but during the interview for this Inside Leadership magazine article a few years ago, I asked you what's the scariest thing that you've ever done, because you had been telling me all about your law enforcement career that included SWAT missions and being a SWAT commander, and your experience in military branches and endeavors as well, and the time you spent with the Navy SEALs and Army Ranger School, and all this. So your life has been this awesome mix of extreme courage in the face of extreme high risk and danger for the purpose of what? For the sake of being in a dangerous situation and being a target? No. For the sake of who can you be protecting? For the sake of protecting others, right? So I expected, when I asked you what's the scariest thing you've ever done, I expected it to be some kind of like SWAT mission or something like that. Oh no, you said skydiving. And I thought, but it's the thing you kept doing. Scariest thing you've ever done, and one of your favorite things you've ever done. So I could paraphrase what you explained to me about that, but I'd rather you tell it. So what did you tell me about that? And then I'll go back to the title.
Well, what I told you, is that when I started skydiving, as I got into it a little bit more and got off student status and was able to do my own jumping and so forth without somebody telling me in the radio what I needed to do in an earphone, I found that I enjoyed where many of the skydivers would do what they call CRW or canopy relative work, formations and all these kind of things. That wasn't me. That wasn't my thing. And they like to open what I call low at about 1,200 feet or 1,000 feet. I enjoyed more opening at about 2,500 or 3,000 feet.
Yeah.
And they called it deploying high. Why did I like that? Because I loved the feeling of being able to look around, see everything in a big, broad view, and the quietness and the serenity. You got a good open chute. All you hear is the wind rippling through it, and you're just up there. You're in command of your own domain for a minute or two, and just the peace and serenity and tranquility that you can experience, knowing, okay, everything's good. I'm going to get down great. Now I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, you enjoy it more if you open high. You enjoy it, to me, you enjoy it less when you open low, because about the time you open, here you are, you're on the ground.
Right.
So everybody has their own perspective, and that was mine.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I've been skydiving. I think I told you that. In my early 20s, I went with my brothers, because when you're the only girl with 4 brothers, you have to do what your brothers do, or you're just a girl. So anyway,
Yes.
so when you told me that, I thought that struck me as the perfect metaphor for your life and who you are and what you do and why. It's high risk. It's potentially life-threatening, right? So, but you don't let that stop you. You do it anyway, because in the end, it brings you peace and serenity. So to me, that was like, deploying high is why you do, it's how you do everything you do. You're going to put yourself through this. You know the risk, you know the danger, you know the challenges, whatever. But in the end, you're going to gain peace and serenity. You're going to sleep great that night.
I love your description, Nora. My wife just thinks I'm crazy. So, either way, but I like yours better, I'd have to say. Seriously. Excuse me just a moment. You are listening to Deploying High, brought to you by Project Lifesaver International, and I'm Chief Gene Saunders, your host. We are speaking today with Nora Firestone. Nora has a tremendous and commendable career in journalism and in writing, and is the author of the namesake of this show, the book Deploying High. If you'd like to get a copy of that book, you can go to our website, projectlifesaver.org, go to our Merck store and order it. And I believe it's still on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So feel free. You can see and judge Nora's writing skills, which I can tell you are outstanding, absolutely outstanding. Nora, my final question. What's next?
What's next? Okay. Getting a lot of my own courses and workshops that I've been teaching people over the years, lots of different things back up online, including one on, how to find your ideal mate and whatever, but even more than that, what's next for me, I envision, and this is going to sound crazy, but commercial modeling. I really want to get into commercial modeling. I grew up in New York, always wanted to be a model since I was a kid, actress, model, and astronaut, of course. But I was too short, whatever. Da, da, da. Today, the world of commercial modeling is so wide open and so inclusive of, every age, every height, whatever. I really want to do that. So yeah, that's my intention. So see how that, I know how that's going to go.
I think you've got a tremendously good chance of achieving that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
We're going to have to get back together, and I hope you will come back very soon. And because this has been a tremendously interesting conversation. As I said earlier, I learned more about you in the first few minutes than I knew about you all the years that I've known you. And I think that has been enlightening to me, and I'm sure it's going to be enlightening to our listeners. You're a fascinating subject, fascinating tales, and I'm sure there's more to come, which I definitely want to get into. So
right.
Thank you. And
thank you. And thank you for all you do.
Well, I appreciate that. But I need to pass that to all the Project Lifesaver people that actually make this happen and how much we appreciate them. So thank you, Nora. You've been listening to Deploying High with Chief Gene Saunders as your host. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and Spotify and our Ankle podcast channels. We come on every other week and we bring you interesting subjects, and we want you to get something out of it. And as we say in Deploying High, we like to bring it all into some view and hope that you take something away from it that will make you a better person and maybe give you a better future. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you again. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deploying High podcast with Chief Gene Saunders, brought to you by Project Lifesaver International. Deploying High would like to thank all of our supporters across the country and around the world. If you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe to our channel, make a donation, and don't forget to tell a friend about us. All proceeds from the Deploying High podcast go to support Project Lifesaver International, online at projectlifesaver.org, the original 501c3 nonprofit organization.